Bryan Driskell, our buddy from Irish Breakdown. Bryan, and appreciate you joining us this morning, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Definitely. Well, I'm going to get right into it. You know, we've been talking some Notre Dame a decent amount here lately, obviously with college football season coming on. Marcus Freeman taking over for Brian Kelly. Just your initial thoughts up to this point. I know he was there last year, coached in the bowl game, stuff like that. What do you think so far about Marcus Freeman? Because early returns, the guy can definitely recruit. We know that.
Yeah, now we got to find out if he can coach, right?
Yep.
And it's not just, everybody talks about game day coaching. I think that's one of the more overrated aspects for a head coach. I think it's all about the preparation. What kind of character are you building on your football team? Are you instilling toughness? That doesn't happen on, Saturday. That happens starting in January. And so far the returns have been good. He's brought a lot of new energy, younger staff overall, but also brought in some veterans like Harry Heastan and Al Golden, really established guys. And has really created a much more competitive culture, much more up-tempo practices. Is just really trying to put his stamp on it and say, hey, look, where are the areas that we've been lacking? What are the things we haven't been good at? What are the games we haven't been able to win? And what do we got to do as a program to start to win those? Because I think that's the thing, right? Like everybody knows Notre Dame's going to beat the teams they're supposed to beat. That's what Brian Kelly's done. Notre Dame's gone 54-10 the last 5 years, right? They're 10-10 against teams that finish in the top 25. That's not how you evaluate success at Notre Dame. It's what do you do against those teams in the top 25? And so that's what he's trying to fix. And it's coming down to just being more disciplined, being more physical. I think that's the thing that from last year, guys, was the most surprising. Notre Dame was not an overly physical football team last year. And you're not going to win at Notre Dame in the big games if you're not able to battle people and beat people in the trenches.
No, without a doubt. And I thought it was also huge that Tommy Rees stayed as OC. You get Al Golden to come in as the defensive coordinator there, adding another guy. We know how good Marcus Freeman is schematically on defense, coming from that Luke Fickell tree, what they were able to do at Cincinnati. Kind of give our viewers, if they don't know the names, a lot of on the offensive side of the ball, kind of give us a little preview of what to expect at the quarterback position and really how you feel about the Notre Dame offense going into the season.
Well, that's the big unknown. I think that's the area that's been holding Notre Dame back is they've been okay on offense, but in the big games, they haven't been able to score. I mean, they're averaging less than 20 points a game against top 10 teams in the postseason, things like that is when they play in the bigger games. So it's going to come down to being better quarterback. I mean, they've had nice quarterbacks, Jack Cohn, really accurate kid, great decision maker, Ian Book, gamer, all that kind of stuff, but not a guy that was going to put a team on his shoulders. And that's what they're hoping Tyler Buchner could be. Obviously, first-year starter, but he showed last year his dynamic running ability. He's an excellent athlete. Actually committed to the University of Michigan. I thought one of your co-hosts might find this interesting. Committed to the University of Michigan as an 8th grader to play lacrosse. So really was an excellent lacrosse player early in his career. As a junior in high school, ran for 1,600 yards and 28 touchdowns. You saw his running ability last year. But what fans didn't get a chance to see last year was this is also a kid who, as a junior in high school, threw for over 4,400 yards and 58 touchdown passes. So he's a good thrower. It's just not what he was used to do last year. Now it's going to be about, can he be a consistent decision maker? Can he throw with anticipation? Can he be accurate? Can he make those plays in the pass game to take some of the pressure off the run game? Because with Harry Heastan back coaching the offensive line, you've got two high-level sophomore tackles and Joe Wald at left tackle, whose dad played Iowa. Blake Fisher was a 5-star recruit at right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be physical. They're going to run the ball this year. You got the best tight end in the country. It's just about what kind of playmakers you're going to have around them. And it's all going to start a quarterback with Tyler Buchner.
Best tight end in the country. Those are the two, Brock Bowers and Mayer. Those are two guys I'd love to have on my team.
First things first, I'm going to have to call the lacrosse coach at Michigan and see why he can't close recruits, all right? Why we can't keep him from going and playing football at Notre Dame. But since you brought up Michigan, I'll go there with my question. Notre Dame is not scheduled to play Michigan until 2033. Now, I was telling these guys last week how special of a game that is to me. My official visit to Michigan was to watch them play Notre Dame. The first game I ever played in was against Notre Dame. Russell Crowe gave the pregame speech. It's a travesty to me that Notre Dame does not play Michigan every year. And I think they can make that game work, even despite not being in the Big Ten. Will we see them play again before 2023 with all the NBC contract talk, or are we going to have to wait that long?
I think that's the big unknown. I think it depends on whether or not Notre Dame stays with NBC. I mean, right now, Notre Dame's contract runs out through the end of the 24 season. Obviously, they're in talks with NBC. I know Fox is involved. Mm-hmm. Both of those would include, obviously, Big Ten favoritism,
sure.
But wanting to schedule those games. And certainly those networks would want to have Notre Dame and the Big Ten, because technically you'd be kind of getting 2 Big Ten games those days when they're playing. Honestly, the Michigan rivalry is one that creates a lot of, I don't say controversy, I say discussion amongst Notre Dame fans, because there's some that love it. They want it back. especially people in my generation that grew up with the games in the 80s and the 90s, which were no matter how good Notre Dame was, no matter how good Michigan was, it was always a battle. In 88, other than Miami, Michigan gave them their toughest game. Same thing in 1989. I personally don't care as much about the Michigan series. I know it's had some great games, but to me, I view Michigan State and Purdue as more traditional rivals for a lot of reasons that don't necessarily have a lot to do with football. It's about, all the controversy about, Notre Dame doesn't want to be in the Big Ten. Well, Notre Dame tried to join the Big Ten twice, and it was Michigan that shut them out. And so I think to me, there's some animosity there with some in the fan base, and including myself, to where, that's just not a rivalry that means as much to me, big picture. But from a on-field product, Notre Dame and Michigan have played in some epic games. And so I do understand why people want that rivalry back. I personally would like to see Notre Dame go to more of if they were to kind of, let's say somewhere down the road, they kind of had some sort of partnership with the Big Ten, like they have with the ACC now. Like, let's say a couple ACC teams leave, Notre Dame gets out of that ACC contract, and they decide to do something with the Big Ten. I'd like to see more of kind of a revolving it around as opposed to just Michigan State, and Purdue every year like it used to be. Get an Indiana on there every now and then.
Yeah, in-state game.
On there every
I
now
love
and then.
it.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. That's what I'd like to see more.
I love it. And that way, you could at least have some sort of loose affiliation like they have with the ACC to get some of those old school rivalries back. I'll ask quickly about your outgoing coach, Brian Kelly, the winningest coach in Notre Dame history. He goes to Louisiana State. The last 3 head coaches for LSU have won national titles. Will Brian Kelly win a national championship at LSU?
No, he won't. He won't recruit the way he needs to recruit. I don't think he's the coach he was at Grand Valley, the coach he was at Cincinnati. I think that guy is gone. I think he is just, to me, look, Notre Dame wasn't lacking talent. Notre Dame lacked big game production because Brian Kelly just didn't get those teams ready to play in big games. And I don't think that all of a sudden miraculously changes because he's now in Baton Rouge. I think Notre Dame fit more of his personality. It fit his recruiting base. The most southern place he'd ever coached before Notre Dame was Cincinnati. Notre Dame's the second most southern place he's ever coached. So I don't see the fit, to be honest with you. And, say that's sour grapes or the case may be. But honestly, guys, I was ready for Brian Kelly to be done 2020 because I feel he had taken the program as far as he could. And I don't see him cleaning up that dumpster fire at LSU anytime soon.
Whew. Yeah, Brian, I'm going to disagree with you there. I think they win one within the next 5 years just because LSU needs a guy that can just run an organization. They just need organization and accountability. It's such a saturated state. But that's going to be fun to watch, and me and you, I'm sure, will have this conversation again. But, Blaine, what do you got over there?
Well, yeah, if Ed O and Les Miles can win one at LSU, I think a competent person can win one. Hey, so Notre Dame, AP Top 25 came out, ranked 5th. What makes Notre Dame a top 5 team in the nation right now?
Talent. Recent success. You guys talked about earlier, Notre Dame's gone 54-10 the last 5 years. There aren't more than 5 teams that can say they've had that kind of consistency. You talk about their inability to win the big games. Well, guess who else isn't beating Alabama and Georgia and Clemson? Everybody else not named Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia, right? And so I think once you get past really 3, to me, there's 3 teams that clearly are better than everybody else right now on paper. It's Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State.
I agree.
I think after that, you got to start saying, okay, there's holes with a lot of different teams. But, the thing about Notre Dame, Tyler Buckner's a top 100 recruit coming out of high school. A lot of the kids that are stepping into these voids were top talents. They were highly ranked kids. And again, recruiting rankings don't equal production in high school, but that's all you got right now with a lot of these places. So there's not a lack of talent. Notre Dame's an athletic team. I think that's one of the things that people don't quite understand about this football team. What they lacked last year, guys, was physicality. And I'll say it, they were not a very good football team last year. They weren't. Not disciplined, not real physical, not real good on the trenches on the offense, but they still went 11-1. So what are they going to do if those things start getting better? And I think that's where the excitement comes from Notre Dame fans is you're bringing some of that energy back.
Yeah, love it. I'm going to go to the Booster Club here. Ethan Williams, all right, hashtag Ask Brian. How has Notre Dame been able to recruit so well with the school being limited because of its high academic standards?
That was never a real thing.
Yes, I was going to ask you this. Yeah.
This is the reality of it. So it's much harder to get into Stanford than it is to get into Northwestern. Now, it doesn't mean you can be a 2.2 and all the time, but Notre Dame's more than willing to get in. And the second thing is, I think there is a major misconception about top players. There's this notion, and I don't want to get into why I think it exists, but there's this notion that, top football players don't care about academics. I did an article the other day. Notre Dame has a top 3 recruiting class. Do you know what the lowest GPA of all their 22 commitments is? 3.25. They have a 5-star kid that's got a 4.18. Now, that's not on a 5.0 scale. They have another top 100 kid with a 4.3 GPA. They have 2 top 100 receivers from Texas, Braylon James and Jane Greathouse, who are a 3.6 and a 3.9. So I mean, they've got two top 100 linebackers. One's a 4.0 and the other's a 3.7. So there are kids out there, but they just didn't want to go to Notre Dame because Notre Dame hasn't proven that they can be a championship program. They hadn't proven in a long time that they could produce high-level draft picks because I could be a 3.9, but if I'm a high-level football player, I still want to go to the NFL.
Yes,
right?
Exactly
That's my choosing major per se, and Notre Dame hadn't shown that. And I think that's the thing that Marcus Freeman is bringing, and that's the reason I don't think Brian Kelly will win because he did not put in the work to go out and get the best talent possible, and it's not a coincidence that from the moment Marcus Freeman showed up, things changed. Notre Dame just had their highest ranked recruiting class in 2022 since 2013. The class that had Jalen Smith and Will Fuller and Mike McGlinchey. Why? Because of the elite defensive recruits that Marcus Freeman brought in. 5 of their best commits didn't even have offers when Marcus Freeman got hired. They didn't even try to go get those guys. And so he went in and said, hey, I'm not afraid to go against Bama and Clemson and Ohio State. And so they're able to go win some of those battles. They're losing some too because you're going to, but they weren't even fighting them before. Now they are. So there's always been kids out there that they could go get. You just have to be willing to battle for him and go out there and make a sales pitch. And Marcus Freeman has done that. His staff has done that. And that's why they had the success. And let's not act like the success they've had recently on the field hasn't played a role in that either.
Oh,
it
for
certainly
sure.
helps.
Yeah. We're talking to Bryan Driskell, Irish Breakdown. A couple more for you, Bryan, before we let you out. One, will Notre Dame ever join a conference? Because when I'm looking at it, to me, it's math, right? We're moving toward a Power 4, which we all know will probably turn into a Power 2. You'll have ESPN against Fox, and then they'll come together somehow to fight, the Klingons for interstellar domination at some point. But when do you think Notre Dame will join a conference, if ever?
Ever. I mean, who knows? I mean, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, or actually 20 years ago, or let's say 1988 when Notre Dame last won a title and there was over 30 independent teams, I wouldn't have said, yeah, there's only going to be like 5 left in 30 years, So will they ever? I don't know. Will it happen in the near future? I don't believe so. I think there's a lot of discussion about, well, they need to do it because of this or that or the other reason. And we heard it in 1990. We've heard it when there was, every time there's been realignment. Notre Dame is going to fight hard to stay independent. The only way they don't stay independent is if there's some sort of realignment that results in A, they can't put together a top schedule, and B, they're shut out of the postseason. That would be the only reason. They don't need the money. They don't need the $100 million like other schools do. They're a private school. They run their business differently. If they get a jump in what we expect them to get from a TV deal, and their apparel deal runs out after next year. So they're going to get another huge boost in revenue after next year from the apparel deal, as long as they aren't like basically locked out of the postseason because teams, they won't play them unless you're in the Power 4 or whatever the case may be. I don't see Notre Dame joining a conference.
Well, I don't know who's fighting harder to stay independent right now, Notre Dame or Taiwan. But the last one I do want to ask you here, Bryan, is you got Ohio State game 1. Hey, Marcus, congrats, buddy. Yeah. Welcome to Notre Dame. You get to go to the Horseshoe. We know Ohio State. To me, I got them playing Alabama in the national championship game, and they did lose that game early at home to Oregon last year, which does not help when you're playing there early this year. It's easy bulletin board material. How are you feeling about that game early? Because, again, it's going to be a fist fight. We know that.
Well, the interesting thing is Ohio State doesn't normally play real well at home in September. I mean, you go back to the year they won the national championship, they lost at home to Virginia Tech by 2 touchdowns, and that was a 7-6 Virginia Tech team. But I do think this Ohio State team is going through a bit of a culture change themselves, trying to get more tougher, more physical, those type of things. So it's going to be a battle. It's really going to come down to trench play, right? Can Notre Dame dominate in the trenches, which is what happened with Oregon last year. It's what Michigan did. And to a degree, it's what Utah did. But if they can be the team in the trenches that we think they're going to be and make some plays in the perimeter, I think it's going to be a ball game. I mean, Notre Dame's played in these environments before. I mean, going 2014 against, obviously playing against at Florida State. 2019, they went down to Georgia. Nobody thought they had a chance there. They had the ball with 2 minutes left at the Georgia 48-yard line, with a chance to go win the game. So these kids are used to this kind of thing. It's just about going to be execution. Can you slow Ohio State down? Can you get enough stops to allow your offense to be in the game? I think that's going to be the big key. And can you win in the trenches? If they can do that, I think they'll have a shot to at least stay in this game and take it into the fourth quarter. And that's where they really want to be.
Definitely, Bryan. Well, thank you so much for joining us, man.
This is great, man.
We ever need anything about Notre Dame, you're the first one. You're going to be you will be the Ghostbuster that we call. But tell everybody where they can find your work. You guys do a really good job over there.
Try to make it easy. Everything we do is Irish Breakdown. So irishbreakdown.com is our website. If you go to our YouTube channel, our podcast on Apple or Spotify or whatever, it's just Irish Breakdown. And we also launched a new college football network recently. So we're trying to build that up too. But as far as our Notre Dame stuff, search anywhere you have content, YouTube, podcast, wherever online. Irish Breakdown's the place to be.
Definitely. And that background's pretty fire, too, as well, behind you. That's a pretty good look there. But, Bryan, we appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right, hey, if you like what you heard, go ahead and ring that bell. Turn those notifications on. We're bringing it every day, daily from 2 to 3 Central, and we want you here. I can hear it ringing now.